Today, I will tell you about an American drama from 2021 called Triumph. Mike Connolly, suffering from cerebral palsy, participates in a school wrestling competition. When he steps into the center of the room, the assembled parents begin to quietly whisper, glancing at the boy's legs, which are reinforced with special pads. They are unsure if the child can handle the opponent. As soon as the start signal sounds, Mike's coach begins to support his ward with all his might, encouraging him. But in the end, the schoolboy still loses and falls to the floor in pain. Concerned, the judge stops the match, summoning the coach to the injured participant, and together they find that Mike's right arm is broken, after which they urgently take the boy to the hospital. 10 years pass. Mike has his final training session with his physiotherapist TJ before moving on to high school, after which he goes to an open day to apply for education. In his new school, the young man meets one of the teachers, Mrs. Payne, who intends to send the teenager to a special education class. But Connolly is not willing to give up. He goes to the school principal, Mr. James Tyler, telling him about the incident and showing grades from previous years of study at the old school. The man glances at the long list of subjects chosen by Mike and admits his fears about the heavy workload. Connolly manages to convince Tyler that he will not only cope with the schedule, but will also wrestle in his free time. James, with a smile, signs the document for Mike's enrollment in higher classes and asks the boy to take the papers to the admissions committee. Connolly proudly hands the paper to Mrs. Payne, saying that he will be able to surprise her. Before the official start of classes in the new school, Mike visits the gym, where he notices a guy named Jeff working with a barbell. Suddenly, the senior student loses control of the weight, and Mike helps him put the equipment back on the rack. Jeff thanks the newcomer for his help, not immediately realizing his peculiarities, after which he learns about Connolly's intentions to revive his wrestling career after failing in the 3rd grade. In turn, Mike learns that his new acquaintance spends hours in the gym in order to win the competition and get a scholarship to college. Otherwise, the guy will have to work in his father's garage all his life. In the evening, Mike watches a video recording of great wrestlers of the past. The first day of high school begins. A young Connolly goes to practice, where he immediately draws the attention of his peers, after which Coach Warren enters the room, who sternly warns students that weightlifting will not tolerate laziness and absenteeism, and suggests that high school students reconcile with the fact that he won't be lenient. As soon as the boys gather in the gym, Warren gives them an endurance task, hoping to weed out the weak participants. Dozens of guys start moving up and down the stands and doing several sets of push-ups until the coach pays attention to Mike, offering him to run on a flat surface, but he refuses and continues to follow his teammates up the stairs. After training, Mike goes to literature class, during which Mrs. Payne talks about the beauty of poetry and tells teenagers that at the end of the semester they have to write their own piece. Connolly notices a beautiful classmate, Patty McGrath, sitting behind him. After the lesson, Mike himself becomes the object of Patty's and her friends' attention. The girls gossip in the corridor when the guy walks past them, awkwardly dropping books. Having observed the newcomer, the duo concludes that Mike is very cute. Later, when Connolly is eating alone in the cafeteria, he is teased by local bully Troy Cooper, but Jeff glares at the bully, keeping him in check. In chemistry class, Connolly recalls how he spent his childhood in constant practice and training, trying not to lag behind his peers. Mike's father was always there, explaining to his son that he was no worse than others. After classes, Troy, along with his buddies, catches up with him. They terrorize the boy again, ganging up on him. Jeff chases the bully away, standing up for tearful Mike. He refuses help from his defender, saying he can handle it himself, but Jeff still drags the boy to the gym and puts him on the treadmill. The high school students understand that people like Troy will not just leave Mike alone, and Jeff suggests to his new friend to fight and stand up to Cooper. Connolly wipes away his tears and agrees to follow his friend's advice. Jeff takes Mike to an aerobics class to work on his coordination. And in the evening, Connolly works out on an exercise bike and watches a recording of gymnastics exercises. But the next day, Mike goes to the library where he notices Patty in one of the halls, but his shyness prevents him from starting a conversation with the girl, and he leaves disappointed for training. In the process, Warren notices that Mike has taken too much weight, which he cannot handle as the guy keeps falling to the side. But the coach reduces the load, reminding him that quality, not quantity, is important, and then suggests the trainee work on his legs. Between sets, Mike asks when the wrestling team selection will take place and says he wants to participate in it. Warren cautiously states that wrestling is a very tough sport, hinting that Connolly's body is too weak for it. However, the stubborn young man is not willing to give up, so the coach declares that he will give Mike a chance to participate in the selection for the team if the boy can press a very heavy weight on the leg press machine 3 times. All students gather to see how Mike will handle the coach's task. He puts in tremendous effort, and he actually manages to lift the weight. Warren allows his trainee to test himself, and Jeff organizes a sparring match for Mike on the football field, training him. The joy of small victories inspires Connolly to gather the courage to meet Patty and exchange phone numbers with her. But the day of the tryouts arrives. Warren pairs Mike and Troy in a sparring match, and the latter wins, despite colossal efforts from Connolly. Cooper leans over his defeated opponent and calls him a pathetic weakling. Despite Troy behaving like an outright brute, Warren takes him into the team along with 2 other seniors, and then informs the losers that they will have to wait a whole year to try their luck in a new selection tournament. Warren offers Mike the position of assistant coach, but he declines and leaves the gym. In the evening, Connolly rehearses his conversation with Patty. He wants to invite the girl to the movies and even picks up the phone, but cannot bring himself to call. The events of the past few days have taken a toll on Mike, who has a meltdown. His father comforts him, reminds him that everyone faces failures, and encourages him to try to believe in himself and his abilities, because without this, victory cannot be achieved. Warren conducts the first wrestling team training session when Mike enters the room, asking the coach if his offer for the assistant position still stands. But the man joyfully introduces the team to his protege and suggests that Connolly act as a dummy for practicing wrestling moves. After training, Warren talks with Mike and learns that the cause of his cerebral palsy was a breathing disruption during birth. But the teacher sympathizes with the boy, confessing that he was once in his place. As a young man, he dreamed of playing football and joining a team, but he could never meet the standards due to his asthma. However, the coach notes that Mike already won when he was born, so all that remains is to eliminate the factors that prevent him from winning. But the young man participates in school matches as part of training, and soon the day of the tournament with a neighboring institution comes. When it turns out that one of the team members is absent, Mike pleads with Warren to take his place, and the coach reluctantly agrees. After Jeff's victory, Connolly steps into the center of the room, having previously listened to advice and instructions from his teacher. His opponent, seeing who he has to fight, mockingly tells Mike that he won't hurt him. Throughout the match, Mike repeatedly finds himself on the mat, causing his friends and coach to worry, and ultimately suffers a defeat. Warren praises his protege for his bravery. After the tournament, Mike invites Jeff to his house and introduces him to his father. When Mr. Connolly learns that his son participated in the competition, he gets angry and scolds him for taking matters into his own hands. And not wanting to drag his friend into a family conflict, Mike takes Jeff to his room, where he confesses that his main goal is to become a wrestler in every sense. He won't back down in pursuit of his dream. But Jeff, understanding Kevate, then notices a piece of paper with Patty's phone number on his friend's table. And the athlete immediately dials the number, urging Mike to talk to the object of his affection. But then it turns out that Jeff tricked him by dialing the number of Alcoholics Anonymous. And not wanting to hurt Connolly's feelings, Jeff gently tries to tell his friend that Patty is not his match. Wishing to prove to Jeff and himself that McGrath is fundamentally different from everyone else, Mike invites Patty to have lunch together during the break, and she agrees. Meanwhile, the young man's father comes to Warren's office, trying to protect his son from injury-prone sports, but the coach literally begs the man not to deprive Mike of the opportunity to develop in sports. During a training session with Connolly, Jeff falls from the rope and suffers a serious injury, depriving him of the ability to walk. The doctors advise him to start physiotherapy as soon as possible, but the boy cannot reconcile with his acquired disability, so Mike offers his friend his help in recovery. It takes 3 months before Jeff accepts his offer and begins the long road to recovery. At the final literature class, Mike reads a poem dedicated to his brave friend and receives applause from Patty. In the evening, he plucks up courage and calls the girl, inviting her for a walk. A few days later, after another defeat in the competition, Mike's father forbids his son from attending sports section, but the young man convinces his parent to give him time until the end of the season. In the breaks between physiotherapy sessions with Jeff and exhausting workouts, Mike gets motivation from Warren. Soon, the coach, assessing his protege's progress in a confrontation with Troy, entrusts Connolly with the right to replace his best friend at one of the most important meetings of the season. But then Mike finally makes peace with his father, receives his support and care, and Jeff takes his first independent steps. Impressed, TJ even offers Connolly a part-time job as a physiotherapist and now agrees. Some time later, Mike becomes a full-fledged member of the team and even receives a school award for boosting team spirit. But during the evening dedicated to the end of the school year, Mike invites Patty to dance. The girl praises her partner's dancing skills and suggests they go to the movies together. The time comes for the final match. Jeff, despite his restored health, asks Warren to let Mike onto the mat in his place. The coach agrees, and Connolly goes out against one of the strongest wrestlers in the district. He fails to win the match, but his opponent appreciates Mike's strength of character and raises his hand after the results are announced, proclaiming the boy the winner.